The wildfire screamed through the trees, snapping branches and igniting everything in its path. Jake hunched low, soaked in sweat and soot, his helmet nearly melting against the heat. Every step forward was a fight against choking smoke and blistering air, but he kept moving, calling out through the roar, "Max, Max, come back, buddy." The last time he saw his partner, Max had dashed toward a break in the tree line, following a noise neither of them had been able to identify. But that was 10 minutes ago, maybe more. Time twisted inside a fire. Jake wiped his sleeve across his face, leaving streaks of ash on his skin. His heart pounded with more than exertion. Now it was fear, not of the fire, not of falling trees or failing oxygen. Fear of silence, fear of never seeing Max again. Max was trained for chaos. He wasn't just a search dog, he was the search dog. Always alert, always loyal, always back at Jake's side before the second whistle. But now, nothing. Jake spun toward the ridge, trying to listen past the fire's roar. The silence was unnatural. Max wouldn't go rogue, not without a reason. "Jake, do you copy? Southeast sector homes are in the path, pull out now." The voice crackled through his earpiece. Orders, urgency, people needed saving. He should turn back, but Jake stood frozen. "Max is still out there," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. His feet didn't move. His fists clenched at his sides. He knew protocol. He knew what was expected. But what about what was right? After his wife left, after the house turned into a quiet shell, after the laughter faded and the weekends stretched to long, Max was still there, curled at the foot of the bed, waiting. At the door when he came home, sitting quietly beside him when Jake couldn't speak. Now that constant had vanished into fire. He stumbled over scorched branches and weaved around trees that glowed red at the base. The deeper he went, the more the forest turned alien-like, walking through a nightmare. "Max," he shouted again, the sound rasping like dry paper against his throat. No bark, no rustle, no tail thumping in the dirt. Only more smoke, only more silence. Jake dropped to one knee, lungs screaming, vision spinning. He was trained for danger. He could handle the heat, the ash, the pressure, but he couldn't handle this. Not again. He'd lost love once, a marriage he tried to save, dreams that turned to dust. Max was the only thing that made the pieces bearable, and now he might have lost him too. Jake's head snapped up, ears straining. One bark, soft, far away, then silence, but it was real, and it was Max. Jake staggered to his feet, fire dancing behind him and hope flickering inside his chest. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew one thing for certain. He was going to find his dog, with that faint bark lingering in the smoke. Jake pushes deeper into the unknown, towards something more than a mission toward, a bond that's about to change everything. By dawn, the wildfire had loosened its grip, leaving behind a scarred wasteland of ash and silence. Smoke still clung low to the ground, coiling like breath from something still alive, still dangerous. But Jake didn't care. Not anymore. His boots sank into layers of blackened earth as he walked deeper into the forest's bones. Around him, trees stood half alive, their charred arms reaching skyward like mourners. "Max," he shouted, voice cracked, and saw. Nothing answered but the echo of his own fear. Max had survived worse. Jake tried to believe that. He needed to believe that. But the forest looked like a graveyard and it felt personal. Each step brought more dread. The night before had been chaos. But this silence was worse. Jake moved between stumps and smoldering logs, his breath coming faster now, not from exertion, but panic. "Max," his voice bounced weakly against the empty trees. No rustle, no bark, no tail wagging in response. Jake stopped. His fists tightened at his sides. 100 search missions couldn't prepare him for this one, because this wasn't a stranger, this was Max. He froze for a second. He wondered if his mind had conjured it some desperate hallucination wrapped in hope. Then it came again, a bark, short, raspy, real. Jake's heart slammed against his ribs. "Hold on, buddy," he muttered, already moving. "I'm coming." He ran, feet slipping, heart thundering louder than his radio. The bark guided him like a lifeline. Somewhere out there, Max was waiting. And he wasn't alone. The sight stopped him cold. There, beneath the shadow of a collapsed pine, Max lay draped protectively over someone. A little girl. She couldn't have been more than 5. Her face was smudged with ash, her lips cracked, her skin ghostly. Pale, Max's body curved around her like a barrier, ribs rising in shallow, slow breaths. Jake blinked hard. "Max," he whispered. His partner was alive but hurt. And somehow, in the middle of this hell, he'd found her and stayed. Jake stepped closer, slowly, afraid to disrupt the fragile stillness. The girl didn't speak. Her eyes fluttered but didn't fully open. Her tiny fingers gripped Max's scruff tightly, like she'd done it all night and didn't dare release her only comfort. She didn't cry, she didn't flinch, she just held on. Max didn't move, either except for a flick of his ears. Jake knelt, a few feet away, breath shallow, afraid that even a whisper might shatter the trust that had somehow bloomed between them in the dark. Jake lowered his gaze, speaking softly. "It's me, buddy. It's okay." Max's eyes were wary, wild protective. His body didn't lift. He barely had the strength. But his tail thumped once, weak and slow. The growl faded into a low whine. Jake knew that sound. It wasn't a warning. It was relief. Max recognized him. And more than that, he trusted Jake to take it from here. "You found her," Jake whispered, voice catching. He ran his hand carefully over Max's head, then touched the girl's shoulder. Her skin was hot beneath the dirty hydrated, exhausted, but alive. Jake blinked away tears that blurred the edges of everything. "You did good, Max. You stayed." The weight of it hit all at once. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a miracle. He radioed for medics, voice low and steady even as his throat tightened. "Found a lost child, 5, maybe 6. She's alive, not verbal. Dog stayed with her all night. Request immediate evac." As he waited, Jake leaned down beside them, one hand on Max's side, the other gently resting on the girl's back. Somewhere in this scorched ruin, love had survived the fire, and somehow, Jake knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning. As the helicopter blades thudded overhead and help arrived, Jake's eyes met Max's one more time. That bond-worn, scorched, and stronger than ever was about to be tested in ways none of them could yet imagine. The medics tried to ease Emily onto the stretcher, but her little hands wouldn't let go. Her fingers were wound tightly into Max's soot-covered fur, her eyes wide but hollow. She didn't cry, she didn't speak. She just held Anna's if. She believed letting go of Max might make everything around her vanish. Jake stepped forward, laying a reassuring hand on Max's back. "It's okay, sweetheart," he whispered, gently loosening her grip one finger at a time. "He's not." going anywhere. But even as she was lifted into the ambulance, her hand stretched back reaching and till the doors close, Max whined, and Jake knew something powerful had begun. He drove in silence, covered in soot, staring through the windshield as sirens led the way. His hands gripped the wheel harder than necessary. Part of him still couldn't believe what had just happened. Max had always been loyal, but this, staying behind, curling around a stranger's child, giving up his own safety to protect hers. Jake glanced at Max, now curled in the passenger seat. Trembling slightly, a patch of fur singed around one ear. "You didn't just find her," Jake whispered. "You saved her, and maybe, in some way, she had saved Max too." In the days that followed, the story spread. Emily had wandered from her family's campsite the day before the wildfire hit. A search party had formed, but the fire moved faster than they expected. The timeline was blurry, but Emily had survived 2 nights alone. Or rather, not alone. She remembered little. Just pieces. A loud crack in the trees. Smoke, crying then. A dog, big ears, brown eyes. She whispered to the nurse. "He found me." The media called Max a hero. The department nodded solemnly. But Jake, he watched from a corner, wondering what had pulled Max toward that girl in the first place and why he'd stayed when everything else burned. Jake sat on the kitchen floor, gently wrapping gauze around Max's paws. The fur had singed clean off in places, the pads underneath raw and blistered. Max didn't flinch. He just stared ahead. Quiet, still. "You should have barked sooner," Jake murmured, wiping the edge of a burn with warm water. "I would have found you faster." Max didn't look at him. His body was here, but something in his gaze had drifted, somewhere beyond the room, somewhere in the flames. Jake tightened the bandage. "What happened to you out there, boy?" He already knew the answer. Everything, in the days that followed. The changes became impossible to ignore. Max avoided loud noises. Thunder made him cower. A slammed door sent him crawling under the table. He growled at the fireplace. He wouldn't eat unless Jake stayed close. He'd wake in the middle of the night, panting, searching the room until he found Jake's feet. He still followed orders, still responded to Jake's voice. But something was cracked. Jake sat with him one night, the TV off, the house quiet. Max lay on the rug, tense even in rest. Jake whispered, "You brought her back. But what did it cost you?" Meanwhile, Emily had been placed in a temporary foster home. The social worker said she barely spoke, except when she drew pages and pages of crayon. Scribbles. Max curled beside her under trees, Max licking her face, Max running through flames. During a check-in, the woman asked gently, "Emily is there. Anything you want?" The girl didn't look up, just pointed at a picture. "I want him," she said, softly. "He's mine. He kept me warm." Then, after a pause, "Can he come live with me?" The room went silent. Jake brought Max to visit, unsure how it would go. They entered the courtyard, and Jake paused as Emily spotted them from across the lawn. She didn't run, she didn't shout. She just lit up her entire body, pulling forward like it couldn't. "Get there fast enough, Max," she whispered. Max stood still, then his ears perked, and his tail moved slow. Uncertain, then faster. Jake knelt and unclipped the leash. Max trotted forward, stiff at first, but then Emily opened her arms, and Max melted into her like coming home. That night, Jake sat quietly with Max beside the fire. And the images came. Not memories, more like instincts his heart had stitched together. Max circling Emily when the smoke grew thick, guiding her to a shallow stream, nosing her under a fallen tree trunk, curling around her when the temperature dropped, growling at the shadows. Not sleeping, not leaving. Jake stared into the flames. "I used to think I trained you to save people," he whispered. Max blinked. "But I think that night she saved you." Guilt began to creep in. Jake couldn't sleep. He stared at the ceiling, at the ceiling fan, at nothing. He remembered the moment in the fire, the call to retreat. The moment he let Max run off into the smoke. "Did I push you too hard?" he murmured. He looked down at Max, curled tightly at the foot of the bed. "You were just trying to protect her." Jake rubbed his temples. "I should have stopped you. I should have gone with you," the silence answered, but it didn't comfort. The next morning, Jake sat with a cup of coffee, staring out the window. Max padded over quietly, still favoring one paw. He didn't bark, didn't whine. He simply rested his head in Jake's lap. Jake froze. Then, slowly, he set the mug aside and ran a hand through Max's fur. "I'm sorry," Jake said. Max let out a long, slow sigh, the kind that seemed to carry every answer Jake had been chasing. No blame, no bitterness, just a quiet understanding. Jake leaned forward, forehead against Max's. "You did what I trained you to do. You did it better than I ever could have." And finally, Jake let himself forgive too. Their wounds were still fresh. But something had shifted. Jake could see it in Max's eyes. Healing had begun, but peace would not come easy, especially not with what came next. The knock came early, sharp and sure, breaking the calm of a quiet morning. Jake opened the door to a man in a crisp jacket, holding a folder like a weapon. His eyes were tight, voice flat. "I'm here for Emily." Jake's stomach dropped. The man introduced himself, Emily's biological father, recently located by social services. Absent until now. "I've been looking," he insisted. "She's my daughter." Max stood at Jake's side, body tense. The stranger glanced at him with disinterest. "I understand she's attached to the dog," he added. "We'll be taking him to—" Jake blinked. "Excuse me, my daughter needs emotional support. If the dog's part of that, we'll include him." It wasn't a request, it was a claim. Jake stared at the man, searching for any real connection behind his words. But all he saw was someone reciting legal terms, not speaking from the heart. "She's better with Max," the man said. "That's obvious. So, if I'm taking her, I should take him." Max stepped closer to Jake, ears pinned. "She's not property," Jake muttered. "Neither is he." But the paperwork told a different story. Jake didn't have legal rights. The man did. And as he turned to leave, promising to return with court orders, Jake felt the familiar helplessness claw up his chest. He wasn't just at risk of losing Max, he was about to lose both of them. The goodbye visit was scheduled at the group home. Jake brought Max in gently, unsure how Emily would react, but she saw them from across the room and ran straight into Max's fur, burying her face in his neck. She didn't say hello. She didn't look up. She just held on. Jake sat nearby as the social worker explained the next steps. Emily wasn't listening. When they tried to ease Max away, she screamed, "No, he's my safe place. He found me." She sobbed so hard her whole body shook. Max whimpered, pressing closer, refusing to move. Jake turned away, eyes stinging. He'd seen trauma, but not like this. The nights grew longer. Max wouldn't settle. He paced the house after sundown, sniffing at the door, sitting by the window for hours. Jake tried everything: routines, soft music, extra walks, but nothing worked. That night, Max whimpered in his sleep, legs twitching. Jake knelt beside him and gently shook his shoulder. Max shot up, dazed, disoriented. "Hey," Jake whispered. "You're safe. You're home." But Max looked toward the door again. Jake understood she wasn't here, and neither of them was really whole without her. At the clinic, the vet examined Max's symptoms. Nothing physically wrong, but the pacing, the howling, it's all emotional. Classic post-trauma. The trainer agreed. Separation anxiety, rooted in what he just survived. It'll take time, patience, reconnection. Jake just nodded, but inside he called it something else, unbearable, because he wasn't just watching Max mourn a child. He was watching a soul wait for her. The papers sat on the counter for 3 days. Jake read them over and over. Custody agreements, transfer forms, offers from Emily's father to include Max like a bonus item in a custody deal. Jake's heart rebelled. Max was his partner, his friend, his family. But every time he imagined Max without Emily, or Emily without Max, he heard her voice. "He's my safe place." Sometimes loving someone meant keeping them. Sometimes it meant letting them go. Jake didn't know which one this was, yet the call came just after sundown. "Jake, it's Officer Ramirez. Emily's missing." Jake's blood went cold. She ran, left her foster home through the side gate, barefoot, didn't take anything. Jake stood before the officer even finished. Max was already at the door, ears alert. "Tell me where," Jake said. "We're going now." The officer paused. "You think Max will find her again?" Jake looked at Max, already whining tail low, nose to the air. "No," Jake said. "I know he will." The forest was quieter now, charred but not burning. But the air still held the memory of fire. Jake and Max moved swiftly between the trees. Max's gait had improved, but his limp was still visible. Still, he pressed on, nose to the ground, weaving through brush and scorched trunks. Jake followed without question. This wasn't training. This was instinct. This was family. The same path that once nearly tore them apart was the only place that could bring them back together. They had walked nearly an hour when Max froze, tail stiff, ears sharp. Then he bolted. Jake ran behind, heart in his throat, through blackened thickets, over cracked earth until Max let out a single, sharp bark, and then Max. A voice whispered, a tiny, trembling whisper beneath a fallen branch. Jake ducked down and found Hermely barefoot, wrapped in dirt and fear. She clung to Max the moment he reached her. "I only feel okay when he's near." Jake dropped to his knees, his arms wrapped around them both. They sat under the stars, Jake, Emily, and Max, bathed in silence. Emily fell asleep on Max's side, one small hand on his chest. Jake stroked Max's fur gently. Max didn't move, just breathed steady and slow. Jake's heart ached, but it was clear now. This wasn't about ownership. This wasn't about custody or courts. It was about healing. About what saved them when nothing else could. Jake whispered, "You belong with her." Max didn't respond. He didn't have to. Jake leaned back, holding them both close. He'd make the call in the morning, but tonight, they were together, and that was everything. As the stars watched over the trio, something in Jake finally settled. He didn't know what tomorrow held, but he knew what love looked like, and it lay curled beside him, beating strong in two hearts that had survived the fire. Jake sat in the hallway, fingers laced tightly in his lap, the courthouse buzz muffled by his own heartbeat. When they called his name, he stood not with anger or fear, but quiet purpose. Inside the courtroom, Emily's father sat across the aisle. There was no shouting, no demands, just Jake's calm, steady voice. "I'm not here to contest custody," he said. "I'm here to propose something different." He glanced at Max, lying at his feet, calm, alert, as if he knew this mattered. She needs Max, but he needs her too. "I'm willing to share guardianship, to make sure they stay together, safely, with support." The judge leaned forward, intrigued. The father, startled. But Jake wasn't there to win. He was there to do right for all of them. 2 weeks later, the decision was finalized. Max was no longer just a search and rescue K9. He was officially registered as a therapy companion, assigned specifically to Emily's care. Jake attended the certificate ceremony quietly. He didn't need a speech, didn't want a headline. But when the judge handed over a new service badge, she smiled. Max Thompson, therapy dog, handler, Emily Sanders. Emily grinned, clutching the badge like it was made of gold. Jake knelt beside them and helped her clip it to Max's harness. "You earned it, buddy," he whispered into Max's ear, twice over. Max nudged his nose into Jake's chest. In response, life moved forward. But some things remained constant. Every few weeks, Jake visited Emily's new home, a modest place with a garden and enough space for Max to run. Emily greeted him the same way every time, a squeal of delight. Arms thrown around his waist. Max bounded to meet him, tail spinning like a windmill, paws scrambling to reach Jake's shoulders. They never forgot. Not the fire, not the forest, not the way they held each other when it felt like the world was breaking. They didn't have to talk about it. Their hugs said everything. Jake watched from a garden bench as Max tore across the yard, ears flopping, tongue out, no limp, no fear, just movement. Joyful, reckless, free. Emily threw a stick, and Max bounded after it with precision, tail high. But even in play, he paused now and then to check on her, making sure she laughed. Stayed close, stayed safe. It wasn't training, it was instinct. The protector in him never faded. But now it coexisted with something else. Peace. Jake sat at the kitchen table one afternoon, watching Emily draw. She hummed softly, crayons spread like treasure. She held one up. "This is the tree where Max covered me," she said. Jake leaned closer. In the picture, Max lay curled around her, fire in the distance. Next to them stood a firefighter, helmet in hand. Jake recognized himself by the sad smile she'd drawn on his face. "That's when you found us," she added. "And Max found me." Jake swallowed hard. "That's a beautiful memory, Em." She nodded. "I draw it so I don't forget, even the scary parts." The firehouse still held Jake's helmet, but Jake found himself more often at the rescue training facility, now kneeling in grass, teaching dogs to search, to follow scent, to trust humans again. He remembered how Max had carried Emily through the flames, not just with his body, but with his heart. Jake wanted to give that gift to someone else, so he trained quietly, patiently, with dogs who were broken, stubborn, scared. Every dog has a purpose, he told new recruits. Sometimes they just need someone to believe in them long enough to find it. Summer ended in a golden haze. Jake arrived for a visit just before dusk. He stood under the porch light, watching Max and Emily run through the tall grass, chasing shadows and SUNBEAMS. No leash, no hesitation, just freedom. Max had grown stronger muscle in his stride, spark in his eyes. Emily's laughter carried across the field like music. Jake smiled, eyes shining. "Look at you," he whispered. "You made it." He didn't interrupt, didn't call out. He just stood there, hand on his chest, feeling everything they'd come through rise inside him like a quiet flame dot. Not grief, not loss, but something better. Gratitude. As the sun dipped and shadows grew long, Jake turned to go, his heart light, his steps slow. He wasn't saying goodbye. He didn't need to, because what they'd built together couldn't be lost. Not to fire, not to fear, not to time. It had only just begun. When the forest closed in and the world turned to smoke, Max didn't run. He didn't flee toward safety or follow his training to return. He chose the child. In the silence after the blaze, people called it a miracle. They said he was a hero. But Max hadn't acted to be praised. He stayed because something deeper guided him, something wordless and strong. Loyalty. It was love in motion, unshaken by fear, untouched by instinct. Even when everything burned, Max held the line, and because of that, a life was saved. Jake could have fought harder. He could have clung to Max, kept him close, and refused to yield. But true love isn't about holding tight, it's about knowing when to let go. In giving Max to Emily, Jake didn't lose his partner. He passed him forward. He passed forward all the strength, courage, and healing Max had given him into the hands of a child who needed it more. And in doing so, Jake discovered something he hadn't expected, that his love didn't shrink when he let go. It grew. She had been the one everyone pitied, the girl who wandered, the one found barely breathing, clutching a dog in the ashes. But she became something more, a reminder that courage often looks like reaching out through fear, and that even the smallest hands can hold on long enough to change everything. Max, Jake, Emily. Not a perfect family, but a real one, bound not by blood, but by trust. And in the end, that's the kind of love that always finds its way back.